Hi, folks. This is Gary Stewart again, the creator of the blog Radical Enlightenment Continued. At the end of May, I created my first video for this blog, introducing myself and introducing the concept or the historical reality of the movement of the Radical Enlightenment in comparison to the mainstream Enlightenment movement in the 17th and 18th century. And my emphasizing the importance of that intellectual movement from which really we were given modernity, the rise of scientific thought, rationality, the importance of empirical evidence, and also the importance of intellectual freedom. And from that, the notion of human rights and the notion of democratic ideas, and why those values have been important and still are important, and that they are under incredible threat at this point in time in history, and that it was important for intellectuals, organizers, activists working for social, economic, and environmental justice to become acquainted with the Radical Enlightenment, its values, and its agenda, and how to not only protect these values from the current onslaught against them, which is happening here in the United States and throughout the world by neo-fascist government and religious oppression, but that we can expand them as well. And that by understanding the Radical Enlightenment, its values, and its agenda, then we can be better organizers, better activists in our fight, in our struggle for environmental and social justice. I had hoped to have created this video a little bit sooner. It was, like I said, at the end of May when I created the first video. I sent it out to a number of folks who I greatly respect and admire, activists, organizers, some intellectuals, some professors, teachers, and it took a while to hear back from a lot of them. And so I wanted to get that feedback from them before I proceeded with this project full-heartedly. I didn't want to be involved in something or creating something and putting out there in the public if most people thought this is not very interesting, or I don't think it's very pertinent. Luckily, everyone agreed when I finally heard back from them that this issue was of critical importance, that the movement known now as the Radical Enlightenment is of incredible importance now, and has been through Western history and really throughout the world, and that these values, as they agreed with me, are currently under terrific, terrible threat by political, economic, and religious forces. And that it behooves activists and organizers and even just regular common citizens to become aware of why these values are important and worth fighting for and protecting and even advancing in our struggles for human and natural rights. So that was very encouraging. And so about a little over 3 weeks ago, I was able to speak with a friend who I knew back in Texas. He's a wonderful activist. He was active with a public citizen in Texas, a wonderful environmental activist who now lives in Portland, Oregon. He has his own blog, and he was able to give me a lot of great advice and connected me to links that helped me to really develop the actual blog site, which now I have a fully functioning blog site for a Radical Enlightenment Continued. And I will give you the link to that so you can go to it after viewing this video. I'll have a brief blurb about this video, some comments about it that you can look at. And with every video, not only on YouTube can you make comments, but you can go to the blog itself and make comments. I look forward to having dialoguing with folks with each video that I make. So this video, I wanted to focus on the personal aspect of why I think this is important, and provide a space for all of you to think about why are these values important to you? What led you to, if you're an activist, an organizer, or you hold certain beliefs about intellectual freedom, human rights, etc. Why these are important to you? How did you come to them? That's important to me because ideas are not just mere abstractions. Ideas have power. And we can see that from the influence of the Radical Enlightenment, the, the ideas of intellectual freedom, of the importance of science or rational thought, of mathematical skill. Um, and from the notion of intellectual freedom comes the notion of human rights and of governments that are not oppressive or not top down, but comes from the concerns and needs of citizens or just human beings, um, and how that can make and should make impacts politically, socially, and economically, and now especially environmentally speaking or ecologically speaking. So basically, I'm just a product of a lower middle class family, a family of six, from Houston, Texas. I come from a evangelical fundamentalist family, um, very value oriented. While it was a safe environment, there were, of course, a lot of negativities in that kind of oppressive environment, intellectually and emotionally. Um, but when looking back, I can see, while I was very more intellectually curious than maybe most of my family members, what really provided an opening for me was thanks to my dad hogging the television set to watch sports. And if I was bored and didn't want to read, I would go into my oldest brother's back bedroom and watch TV on his little black and white television set. It wasn't the best television, but I was able to stumble onto PBS, a PBS station in Houston, and saw great programming on art, music, drama, masterpiece theater. But what really opened the door for me was a program, documentary by Kenneth Clark, an art historian in Britain who created the Civilization series on tracking the historical development of Western society from the collapse of the ancient world through the Dark Ages, through the medieval period, um, the high medieval period, and then into the Renaissance, the scientific revolution, 18th century thought, the revolutionary periods, all the way up into the 20th century. And that just kind of blew my mind. And it was so fascinating to see um, how I got to be in the society that I was. How did this kind of culture, American late 20th century, came into existence, and the intellectual roots of that. And that just really opened the vistas for me intellectually. It also increased my interest in art. I always had been for some time interested in ancient art, ancient history, particularly the Greeks and Romans. And that also fueled my interest in the Renaissance. It was really fascinating to move from the rigidity of so much of the artwork during the early dark period, dark ages, and then the early medieval period, but then could see the changes that were happening over time in the late medieval period, and then the explosion of the Renaissance. I was fascinated by that. And also, I was artistically inclined at that time and drew a lot of pictures and what have you. Ultimately, I think that really all the provided a space for me to begin to explore history. I, read a lot about ancient history, Greek and Roman. Um, I started reading, ancient Greek authors, Homer, um, Aeneid, Sophocles, Empiricles, even Plato, some Aristotle. That was a little heavy going for me. And then, through the medieval period into the Renaissance with Dante, um, Chaucer, Shakespeare, and I was doing this on my own. I was just fascinated and hungry to learn, even going into Descartes. Not that I can say I was an expert or fully understood what I was reading, but I wanted to understand. Two things that really kind of further, propelled me outside of the fundamentalist mindset was one, I discovered during my early teens that I was same-sex oriented. I was gay, which was extremely traumatic, given that my religious upbringing at that time was saying, being gay was worse than murder. And then by the end of my senior year in high school, I began to have intellectual doubts about Christianity. Um, and my oldest brother had gone to a little Christian, podunk Christian Bible college out in El Cajon, California, where they had the Institute for Scientific Creationism. I followed his path, hoping to try to save my faith. Went to another little college for a while and just was not intellectually satisfied. My doubts increased. And then I went to Baylor University, and there I got a class on the Jacob Bernowski's television series, The Ascent of Man, which really exploded the doors wide open intellectually for me, and ultimately leading to me to reject traditional Christianity, to accept scientific thinking as paramount rational thought, um, ultimately leading me to get a degree, a BA in philosophy, almost a master's, and then going into political social work, because that was during the dark years of Ronald Reagan. And it wasn't enough to, just focus on academic philosophy. I mean, the department was heavily Anglo-American and it didn't seem to have any connection to what was going on socially. All of this, to make a long story short, led me to um, shift away completely from religion to focusing on addressing social justice issues. Thank you, Chomsky. I read you in the 80s, which helped me to begin to critique American exceptionalism and to see the dark horrors of American empire. Along the way, as being an activist and organizer around environmental social justice issues, anti-racism work, it became clear that just focusing on particular issues was not enough. I had to look at the larger economic political system that created all these numerous individual crises and to see that they're interrelated, which ultimately led me to become an eco-socialist and indeed an eco-Marxist. Um, so all of this whole journey was really a period of self-discovery, of the importance of Spinoza, who we will be talking about later, and who was the first modern materialist in European history. Uh, from his emphasis on intellectual freedom, rational thought, um, but really he was the first to provide any kind of rationalist historical critique of sacred scripture, particularly Jewish scriptures. All of these people provided the intellectual tools for me to break free from oppressive systems. And that's why, to me, the radical enlightenment is so critical. And that because of the radical enlightenment, even though the modern era has so many problematic aspects to it, but I think a lot of those problematic aspects are due to not to the full acceptance of the implications and the agenda of the radical enlightenment. So I'm ending my this video with this. Again, I'm sharing this to get you to think about why, or at least how did you come to your positions as an organizer, as an activist, or as a common, just a regular citizen who are concerned about justice, be it social, racial, economic, and ecological. And I'd be really interested in hearing your own personal stories of how you came to your own enlightenment, if you will, um, and to dialogue about that. So I will provide a link to the blog that you can, go and check out the blog, and not just here on YouTube make your comments, but you can actually go to the blog and make your own comments. I look forward to seeing those. And the next blog, I mean, the next video, I will be starting to focus at the historical roots of the radical enlightenment, or just the enlightenment in general. It just didn't happen willy-nilly. There were historical roots to it, and going back to ancient Greece and somewhat to ancient Rome. Um, but again, all of these videos are to help us to reflect on what's currently going on, and but also to be understanding that we're part of a long historical process, and that we're not in isolation. And by understanding our past, hopefully we can avoid making similar mistakes that happened in the past. So anyway, thank you for your time. I'm really happy to be getting this second video out to you, and my plan is to do a video weekly. So hopefully to see you soon next week. Thank you very much.